Buenos días a todos los seguidores de Criptonoticias. Mi nombre es Fernando Clementín y nos encontramos en una nueva entrevista para nuestro canal de YouTube, nuestro portal y nuestras redes sociales. En este caso tenemos el agrado de hablar con Kristian Csepcar, quien es jefe de marketing en Braiins, una compañía relacionada con desarrollos para la minería de Bitcoin, hardware, firmware y demás. Y el tema de hoy va a ser Stratum V2, que es un protocolo para la minería de Bitcoin muy usado, que se ha lanzado recientemente una nueva versión. En realidad ya lleva un par de años en desarrollo, pero bueno, Kristian nos va a contar un poco más sobre este tema. Hello, Kristian. Thank you for
Hello,
being here with us.
pleasure to be here. I'll just add to the intro. I understand a little bit Spanish. I'm also a Bitcoin miner mining in Paraguay using Stratum V2. So
Great,
it's
great, great.
it's a good addition to the intro, I would say. Yeah.
Perfect. Kristian, to start, if you had to explain what is it Stratum V2 for our readers and followers, uh, how would you describe it, and why is it innovative to Bitcoin mining?
Yeah. So to understand, you have to at least understand that Bitcoin mining is you have a machine that mines, like specialized professionalist computers. So not my phone, but you have a physical machines that mine, right? You have a physical machine, and then they communicate with a mining pool, and so you have those two parties. So historically speaking, when you talk about 2012, we had the whole mining industry was like when we talk about Antminer S9, which is a 6-year-old hardware from Bitmain, we had the whole network was like two machines. So two S9s was in 2012 when the first version of Stratum was created. Now, when you would recalculate the total network hash rate to S9s, like if all the network was S9s, we're talking about over 30 million machines. So it's a very different market. Like it's brutally big. We're talking about millions of mining machines, a lot of data bandwidth, and a stratum is basically a set of rules, communication protocol, how the machine talks to the mining pool. It's very simple. It's like the machine says, here is the hash that I'll calculate it on this block, and the pool says, yes, thank you, your miner username XY, I know how to calculate your reward. So it's a very simple mining protocol. Is just a fancy name how to say the communication rules, how mining device communicates with the mining pool. And it's very simple. Where is the innovation? Again, as I said, in 2012, when this first stratum was made, it was just very important in order for the whole pool industry to get created. Getting into technical details doesn't matter, but the whole hash rate was very small. We had very different requirements on the mining protocol. So if you talk about 2012 and Stratum V1, you're talking about JSON, not end-to-end encrypted communication, which was fine in 2012. But now, like 10 years later, we're talking millions of mining machines, professionalized data centers, use cases like you're mining in the middle of desert on oil rigs, etc. So we have very different requirements on the whole network. So just one of the biggest innovation is Stratum V2. It's binary. So really, in the Stratum V1, you're sending. So if somebody is a little bit more technical, JSON, which is a plain text JavaScript format. It's nonsense. So it's like for these days modern industry, it doesn't make any sense. So Stratum V2 is binary, so zeros and ones. So it's very efficient. We're talking about 70% of the data load being cut just because you use like a binary protocol, and it's, for example, end-to-end encrypted, which is extremely important because think about man-in-the-middle attack, governments attacking the pools on the ISP level. Anything, like there can be a lot of attack vectors, and it is very easy to do with Stratum V1. With Stratum V2, very simple. It's end-to-end encrypted. You cannot do anything about it. So think about, so when you talk about Stratum, think about communication rules, how mining devices talk to the pools and how pools talk to the mining devices, and it has to be upgraded because the whole market is totally different, professionalized, very big. So we need just a better new standard which we can build on the next 20, 30 years. That would be the summary.
So we have efficiency, we have security, and which other advantage would you add to when using Stratum V2 for mining?
So so we talk about efficiency and security. Those two are very, very important. Like those two are easy to understand. Like it's we just need a better standard. But then there are two more that I'm always adding, and it's like the decentralization and profitability. I'll start with the profitability because in Bitcoin everything works because there are incentives. Like it's very beautiful system because everybody has incentive to work and work according to the rules. So I'm very happy that the upgrade is not just a technical upgrade that nobody cares about, because there are incentives impacts that will help with the adoption. So for example, just by reducing the data loads by 70%, but it being binary, we're talking about really a lot of reduction bandwidth internet, like limits to big data centers or pools. Because one funny thing is people think there's unlimited internet. It doesn't exist. Like really, you're just using so little of the internet that they tell you it's unlimited. But really mining pools, we're talking about insane amounts of data. Like it's a lot. And so we pay significant money for the internet connection, and you were talking about several servers all around the world, etc. So there's financial incentives just by reducing the data load. Also, I would say one interesting for the miners, because Stratum V1 is very old and unstandardized, like the uh, protocol. They just didn't know it's gonna be that successful and it will stay so long. So with Stratum V2, they fixed a lot of things, and there's, for example, there's a very standardized way how you can add sub protocols or sub channels, and what that can create, like nobody knows, but in the future we can build things that don't exist now. But for example, you can be building very smart telemetry reporting, for example, in your farm, and then you can do very cool monitoring systems, etc., etc. And that doesn't exist now. So miners have a long-term incentives to upgrade, because if they have standardized protocols and standardized ways and interfaces how they can work with data on the machine level, it's like long term it's super necessary. When we get to the chip nanometer that are very, very small, and we have to find the efficiency gain somewhere else. So just by optimizing and running like a perfect monitoring, perfect management of your farm, there is the other place where you can get a lot of efficiency gains. And that's why you need Stratum V2. It's standardized, beautiful standard. So you want to work with that when you're talking about large professional operations. And the last one is decentralization. Here I want to mention, because really decentralization is not binary, it's a scale. So when we talk about something is decentralized or is not decentralized, you're not talking yes or no, you're not talking 0 or 1. It's a big scale. Exactly. So it's a big scale. So I want to emphasize Bitcoin is decentralized, mining is decentralized, like it already works and is decentralized monetary system. But there are things that can be improved. And for example, Stratum V2 creates like a use cases where the miner itself, he still can mine in a pool, but he can start building the block template. So he can start building the blocks with the transactions and then be negotiating with the pools if they want it or for how much, etc., etc. The thing is that this cannot be done in Stratum V1, and in Stratum V2 it creates new use cases which further improve the decentralization. But it's not like it's a silver bullet. It's not like, oh, now we give the power to the hands of miners and everything is solved. No, it doesn't work that way. First of all, mining is decentralized and it works. So it's like, that's what I want to emphasize. Like the system is already beautiful, decentralized, and it's working. But there are some small things that we want to further improve. Like the block building by miners, it creates it puts a little bit more power back to the miners. It creates new use cases. It creates new mechanisms where you can very easily find if your pool is a bad actor, if he's a dick, it's like all those things like help help in that decentralization sense. One more thing I forgot, which is very much because just today, like our pool mined 3 empty blocks in the past 5 days, I think, which is, first of all, it hurts now because there are very high fees now. So it already hurts. But now think about 3 empty blocks in 2 halvings. That's going to hurt like hell. Like right now, it's just added extra money. But 2 halvings away, it's going to be the crucial part. In Stratum V1, there is no way to fix empty blocks. In Stratum V2, there is a way to fix it. So again, that's the financial incentives for everybody, for pool, for mining operators, for users as well, because you don't want empty blocks when we're going to have a lot of transactions on the network. And in Stratum V2, don't quote me exactly how it works technically, but it's like empty blocks really get made when the second block is very, very quick. So it's literally, we mine it so quickly that there is no time to fill it with transactions. But with Stratum V2, there is a way to have like a second already prepared block for the miner, so he would be start mining on the second one. So, and that's a very, very, very important thing, that financial incentives is added to everybody, to pools, to miners, to users of Bitcoin network. And so I didn't want to forget that, because this is exactly, Stratum V2 is something that we don't need now because Bitcoin works, but we really need it long term. Like we really want, everybody is incentivized to upgrade, but with Bitcoin in general, but with Bitcoin mining even more, it is very, very slow process. Every change is a very, very slow process. It's a feature, not a bug, but in mining it's even slower. So it's like we started the work. I think we published Stratum V2. We're the co-authors, and we with Matt Corello, and we published like 2 or 3 years ago. And so everybody would be like, hey, so it's a fail, it's not adopted like everywhere. No. It's like it's step by step. It's like we're talking about 10-year game. Like 2 halvings away, we have to have it everywhere. So so I just want to make sure like the development is very positive, and really everybody's thinking like a 8 years time frame. So don't be like pessimistic about Stratum V2 not happening. It is important that we have the small steps and gradually build to those 2 halvings away.
Great. I was going to ask you, which was the reason why the development of B2 took so long? Because the SB1 is from 2012, right?
12, yeah.
And the SB2 is from 2019. So you have 7 years there, and you are answering now why it took so long.
Yeah. So there's more to the answer. When we talk about Stratum V2 as a protocol specification, that's what we released in 2019. You're talking about the white paper that says how it should work. It's not code. It's just the idea. Specification. It's the idea. It's like a saying, this should work this and this, but you can code it in C. We code it in Rust, etc. So just creating the specification was very, very challenging, because it's like you're really creating like a standard for the next 20 years. So you want to make sure you have all, and you want to have really, really like good standard, because like we're talking about a huge industry now. So it really took 2 our Braiins co-founders and Matt Corello, and they worked for months on publishing the spec. And the spec, when they published it, it's still like not final. It's like it's open source standard, and there are still things changing, because more and more people start to implement it, and they figure out, hey, maybe here we have to use the noise protocol. Don't quote me on what's noise protocol, but I remember just a few months ago, based on the open source implementation that is being created by several entities, they figured out, hey, we should upgrade this small part. So it's like it's long work in progress. So in 2019 we published it, but the publishing means it's the start of the journey, and then in parallel there are different implementations. So for example, in our firmware, on our pool, we have our closed source implementation in Rust. But in parallel, there is there is the Stratum reference implementation, open source in Rust also, that other pools and other entities can take. For example, the demand pool from Alejandro Del. And it's still work in progress. So that's it's a feature that it takes so long. Hey, honest answer, everybody would like to have it faster, but mining is it's brutal industry. It's like every day your number one priority is uptime. You just want to be mining. That's your priority number one, and there is like priority number one uptime, then nothing, and then maybe like a firmware efficiency optimization. And and you start doing those, and like Stratum V2 is we're very busy. Miners, pools, everyone is so busy that to be honest, I'm glad that it's moving, and it's moving in a very good pace. We see the reference implementation. We see Foundry number one pool putting grants on the Stratum V2 reference implementation. We have demand pool now, so it's moving even better than I would expect. Like to be honest, I would expect we would be waiting for the next cycle, like because there you start really thinking about empty blocks and stuff like that. So that's where I would. So this pace is way better than I would expect, to be honest. So again, be positive, guys. Like
that's good.
It's going well, even better than we would think. Yeah.
And how long have you been using SV2 in Braiins?
So we have a very good advantage because we have a firmware and we have a pool, and to have like a full implementation of you need both ends. You need a machine that stocks Stratum V2, and you need a pool that can listen Stratum V2. So for example, how the demand pool does it with Alejandro, he has machines that don't talk Stratum V2, but he puts a software that translates Stratum V1 into Stratum V2, and then the translation software talks to the mining pool. Our advantage is that we have a firmware, so we implemented the Stratum V2 into the firmware and into the pool. So we are running like that. We have thousands of miners running Stratum V2, like, don't quote me, but maybe 6 months after we published the Stratum V2 specification, and we're the only one currently. Yes, but we, first of all, we're the authors, so we knew what's coming, so we prepared, and we have the very big advantage of having the both ends.
Are there any Bitcoin mining pools or any other actor in the industry that may not be favored from using Stratum V2?
Interesting question. I'm just thinking historically, if I have really, I'm thinking, because we talk to all other like competitors, we're still all Bitcoiners, and I'm really thinking if there was any sort of negative. In the beginning, I remember that there were some negative, like because it was perceived that it might be like a project of Braiins, which doesn't make any sense because it's open source standard. It's like a open source communication protocol. Like it's like so it was very uneducated bullshit. But other than that, literally zero. And even from the like Chinese players that you would least expect it, we have a very strong interest. So it's either they're starting to be interested or they're neutral and they don't care because like they have other priorities. But nobody really, I'm trying to remember all the different conversations we have. Nobody's like against it because everybody just understands it's a lot of work and it will take time.
Yeah, but for example, I was thinking that regarding regulation, if you have a pool that has to be compliant with some regulations in a country, maybe that pool won't want the miners to select the transactions they want to include in a block.
Very interesting because interesting. So when we talk about the transaction building, it's not default functionality. So it's something that the protocol enables, but you can like turn it on and off. So it's like a feature. So if you don't have to use it if you don't want to. So it's like
like
on the
Ocean, for
pool.
example.
Yeah, but what I'm so it's not a problem with the transaction selection. If, for example, for some reason Foundry would be heavily regulated in the US, they can
Yeah.
turn it off. And if the miner doesn't like it, he would move to a pool that enables it. That's not a problem. What I'm thinking of is the end-to-end encryption, because as far as I know, you cannot turn it off. And I can very easily imagine like China, I don't know, Iran, and like places like that. They don't like end-to-end encryption things because they cannot have a look. So that part I don't know, and as far as I know, you cannot turn it off, and that can be regulatory problem somewhere. But
Yeah.
but hey, if you live in a country like that, run, stack sats and run, exit, move away.
Great. And talking about that kind of selecting transactions and all that, what are your thoughts on ordinals? And what about the possibility of adding filters to that kind of transactions in Bitcoin?
Very, very political topic these days. I'm
Yeah.
checking the Twitter. I'm checking the Twitter. I'm gonna be talking as a Bitcoin miner, right?
Yeah, of course.
I'm not talking as a guy working for Braiins. I'm a Bitcoin
Yeah.
miner. I like the fees. I really
Mhm.
like the fees. I'm mining the fees. I love the fees. I like it. I love it. I don't know who's sending what transaction. I don't care. They're paying. I like it. Second, how I think about it is Bitcoin is freedom. Like for me, Bitcoin is freedom. I really couldn't care less that somebody puts a dick pic on blockchain. Like I I I think it's stupid. Like I would never do it. I would never
Yeah.
recommend to any of my friends to do it, or to even worse, to buy it. But if really somebody wants to do that and he will pay the block space, like I couldn't care less. Like, hey, Bitcoin is freedom. I'm really not that technical to understand if it can really get that bad that it's so spam long. I don't know. I don't understand that. But what I'm getting from all the technical people, way smarter people than me, it's like first of all, like memory space is getting so fucking cheap that they can spam away. It doesn't matter, and they pay for it. So if there's gonna be bigger issue, there will be some fix, like I don't know, like increasing the fee for the SegWit data. But I'm really not that technical. If it's a problem, there will be smart people in Bitcoin that will come to consensus and will upgrade. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But I'm really personally against any sort of filtering, and if it's according to consensus, it's liberty, freedom, and do whatever you want. But we saw transaction filtering in the past, like OFAC, and I hate it. We hate it. I will talk for Braiins. Like Bitcoin is freedom. We don't want any censorship, any filtration. We want everybody to use Bitcoin however they want and pay the fees. It's very simple like that.
Yeah. So you do not agree with any possible filter that maybe developed that it was developed actually to that kind of transactions.
As a pool operator, you're actually decreasing the revenue for your customers. I'm happy that there's a free market, so pool like this can exist and attract customers that think this way. But I would never recommend it in Braiins. I would never, as a miner myself, join pool like this. It is, but I'm glad that Bitcoin is free market and they have opportunity to create that pool. And if there are miners that think the same, vote with your hash rate. It's simple as that. Take your hash rate, put it into Ocean. That's liberty. That's freedom. You vote with your hash rate. I would never do that. Like I'm keeping my hash rate at Braiins pool, and we're not gonna censor and filter anything ever. So sorry about that.
Great. You made your point. Kristian, thank you very much for your time. It was a really interesting conversation, and we love to have you here soon again.
Very pleasure. We love Criptonoticias fans for a long time, so anytime. Pleasure.
Thank you. Y a nuestros seguidores les decimos que si les gustó el video, ya saben, se pueden suscribir a nuestro canal para estar actualizados sobre todo el contenido que vayamos publicando en los próximos días. Mi nombre es Fernando Clementín y los saludamos hasta la próxima.
Ciao.
Yeah.
But I'm really personally against any sort of filtering, and if it's according to consensus, it's liberty, freedom, and do whatever you want. But we saw transaction filtering in the past, like, oh fuck, and I hate it. We hate it. I will talk for Braiins. Like, Bitcoin is freedom. We don't want any censorship, any filtration. We want everybody to use Bitcoin however they want and pay the fees. It's very simple as that.
Yeah. So you do not agree with any possible filter that maybe developed that it was developed actually to that kind of transactions.
As a pool operator, you're actually decreasing the revenue for your customers. I'm happy that there's a free market, so pool like this can exist and attract customers that think this way. But I would never recommend it at Braiins. I would never, as a miner myself, join pool like this. It is, but I'm glad that Bitcoin is free market and they have opportunity to create that pool. And if there are miners that think the same, vote with your hash rate. It's simple as that. Take your hash rate, put it into Ocean. That's liberty. That's freedom. You vote with your hash rate. I would never do that. Like, I'm keeping my hash rate at Braiins pool, and we're not gonna censor and filter anything ever. So sorry about that.
Great, you made your point. Kristian, thank you very much for your time. It was a really interesting conversation, and we love to have you here soon again.
Very pleasure. We love Criptonoticias fans for a long time, so anytime, pleasure.
Thank you. Y a nuestros seguidores les decimos que si les gustó el video, ya saben, se pueden suscribir a nuestro canal para estar actualizados sobre todo el contenido que vayamos publicando en los próximos días. Mi nombre es Fernando Clementín y los saludamos hasta la próxima.
Ciao.